Hello everyone, this is StoryMan-Jack. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of House of Cain. I'm going to try to have these done before time. I believe this one will be scheduled. So they should drop every Saturday and Wednesday, and if something comes up I will let everybody know on Twitter. If you enjoy it, please let me know. If you don't enjoy it, please let me know why not. And please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. House of Cain, Den of Wolves, Chapter 3, Episode 2, The Gifts of the Dragon. No, I would not want to live in a world without dragons, as I would not want to live in a world without magic, for that is a world without mystery, and that is a world without faith. R.A. Salvatore, Streams of Silver. Please, Jackson, take the bundle and follow me. I did as the Queen requested. I looked around, but I did not see her sister. The weight of the bundle was almost nothing. However, I could feel a different kind of weight. A weight of power. Pure, raw power. And I could feel the weight of the life that held knowledge for all ages. And that knowledge has now passed. Thinking long about the last Nephilim, the last of dragonkind, gone forever from reality, diminishing the world. The knowledge it must have had, I said, musing as I walked. Yes, Father was always learning, even here where he was exiled, until the day you came. She stopped. I feel the sadness of your heart, Jackson Cain. She reached out and stroked my cheek. Do not be saddened. You released him from a torment. All the others of his kind gave themselves long ago. Some just gave up. Some went back to the world of men and let mortals slay them in order to give birth to the myth of the dragon. Why would they do that? And wait, father? I asked. The old ones were the fathers of the She. We were a necessary part of their obligation. She paused, her own eyes glistening. As for myth of dragons, she smiled, her pointed teeth showing. Mortals need heroes, and the dragons gave their lives to give them such inspiration. That didn't make any sense to me, but not much of this had so far. Let me ask you this, young Cain. Would a tale of a halfling who likes to trade riddles with a dragon and survive, or of a knight with a saber of light, exist without those old tales of dragons and heroes? They gave themselves, once their purpose were done, to give you myth and legend, an inspiration into what is right and wrong. She began walking again. That one statement, as innocuous as it seemed, frightened me more than any threat she could have ever made on my life. It was not the pulp culture reference. It was a warning. It told me the Queen knew me so completely that she knew who my favorite character was from tales told in a media the She could not even understand. No sooner had I had the thought than she said something that put me a bit more at ease, and at the same time rocked the foundational assumptions of my very being. Your father spoke of your love of those tales. He was very proud of it, actually. She turned her head and met my eyes as we walked. He was very proud of you, Jackson Cain. Yet, I said, feeling the statement a way to ponder later. I feel as the world is a lesser place without the being I didn't even know existed anymore. Indeed, she said, and continued her walk. We made our way back down the path to an area of the hall and throne. We only stopped when we stood in the center of the dais, for everyone to see. Kit sat near the dais, with Max standing and smiling behind her. She looked odd. Strange, yet familiar. And it wasn't the fact that there was something different, and I couldn't place my finger on it. Too much had happened. Too many truths revealed. And, as the old saying goes, secrets just lead to more secrets. There's always another secret. The queen came forth and took the bundle from my hands and lay it upon the ground before me. She knelt, almost submissively, and held 2 blades in a sheath made of dragon skin, attached to a belt of the same material. The 2 kukri blades, shining in silver, glinted in the light. But when the light hit it just so, the blades shined in a rainbow flash of all the colors of the spectrum. Mithril, I breathed, hardly believing the old dragon had told me the truth. It was one thing to know something should happen, something existed, something you've been told was a tale of fairies and not real at all. And then it was another to hold that item in your hand. Nothing marred the blade, until I flipped it over. Etched in the blade, well, inlaid into the blade, I should say, was an ebony substance, the same material as the horn hilts of the crooked blades. The inlay was what looked a Japanese letter, and the inlay so seamless it looked as if one piece existed, no transition between the metal, what is perceived as the metal, and the ebony scroll work itself. What does it say? I asked. I don't recognize this dialect. The queen, who had been handing something to another she, turned back to me where I stood in my own little world, watching the rainbow glint of the blade, as if mesmerized. Whispering, she said, "It is the angelic script." Then in a resounding voice that everyone in the entire realm should be able to hear, she said, "In thy left lay thy hope, and in thy right lay thy faith." It was so close to the scripture that I looked up sharply, and not meeting the queen's eyes as I expected, but a woman who had invited my dreams. She stood holding a long katana-style blade made from the same silvery substance and style as my twin kukri. And before I could ask the queen who she was, though I really did know, she finished her statement. "And in Kitsune's hands lay thy love." My heart hurt. An old pain, one that I would carry to my grave, if I ever found myself in one. There was only silence. This was formality. My thoughts went to Angel. the mother of the child I'd lost, and her. After what seemed like years, Mac, in a very solemn voice, said from the crowd, finishing the scripture that I could not see for the tears in my eyes, "And the greatest of these is thy love." I stood, tears streaming down my face, watching Kit in her beautiful human form. Without taking my eyes from her, I resheathed the blade. These are beautiful, as are you. I felt a tear drop from my chin, but I cannot accept any of it. Not the blades, and not you as my mate. And I dropped the blades to my feet and walked towards the Nephilim's cave. I needed to be alone. That was my default state, and I had to get away. For the first time in my life, I was overwhelmed by misery and absolute panic. I found myself weeping as I sat upon a boulder beside the cave's opening. I felt her before I saw her. In my state, I could not even have heard her follow me. "Tell me about her," she said, knowing what was in my mind. My head was bowed, and though I could see nothing through the liquid distortion of my tears, I appeared to be looking at my boots. We met at a bookstore of all places. A beautiful Irish lass looking through the contemporary religion section of the store. She was in a program, a seminary of sorts, to be one of the few female preachers in this non-denominational church. "She believed in the white Christ?" Kit asked, her voice tender, and only holding a slight accent, unlike when her voice was in her animal form. I nodded. When my father found out, it was the biggest argument we'd ever had. He broke my left arm in 4 places before it was over. "Huh, I see," Kit said. "What harm befell your father, though, I wonder?" "I broke his collarbone, and both his legs." I smiled, remembering. "How did it end?" she asked, and I had a peculiar feeling she already knew. Neither one of us would submit. Angie found us there, bleeding and broken, in the backyard on the mat we used to spar on. Both of us bleeding and broken, still trying to kill each other. She just pulled up a chair. I smiled through my tears, not really seeing anything but the replay in my head. She sat down and watched. After a time of us occasionally punching one another, she said, "Is this going to take all night? I can come back tomorrow," even though she knew neither one of us would give in. We stopped, both of us shocked at her behavior. "I am a Christian, Mr. Kane," she said to my father. "I believe that Christ came and took our sins. You are a Jewish man and don't believe what I believe." She leaned forward and smiled brightly. "That doesn't mean you're a bad guy, and that doesn't mean I am either. A bad woman, I mean. I love Jackson, and I do not love him any less whether he is Jewish or a Christian." I laughed. And then I sat in that memory for a long time. She had a way about her. My father. She was the only one who could ever tame him. I knew that my father knew just as she did that I would convert. Being exposed to the truth kind of does that. I'm not saying it's the truth. I'm saying it's what I believe is the truth. But whether you believe in the truth or not, it's still the truth, whether you know or not. I'm Hebrew, and I value that heritage and culture and the past. And I take lessons from that faith, for I know it as well as anybody possibly could. I mean, I can still read ancient Hebrew and not have to translate it. But I am Christian, baptized and reborn. That is why, Kit whispered almost to herself, looked up. Why what? Kit seemed to change what she was about to say and placed a gentle, warm hand on my... Your father, he came here. He tried to kill the old one to prevent this very prophecy. She paused. Many thought him insane. I just stared at her. He said you found the one. That you weren't the last king. That you would have a child. She seemed to think about something and then continued. When the old one told him that he knew you were to be the last and that the prophecy would come to be, since many of its predecessing mysteries had been foretold, your father asked him how to prevent it. And he was told the truth, but did not understand its meaning. The only way to prevent a prophecy is to break a string in its thread. Yes, if he had killed the old one, then he could prevent the pain you would have had to go through. Or perhaps not. You see, the plan is not as simple as what is destined or the path is chosen for you. The plan adapts to your choices. What is intended will be done. And the Creator uses the bad to make good. Why then, I asked, standing angry. She was nothing, for nothing, a toy in my life, for the vamps. She stood and held out her hand to me. Come back, sit. Her voice was very calm. It took me some time, but I finally forced down my anger. And after I'd sat back down, she spoke. Angel was your choice. She was your love, and she taught you what love really is, for she loved you more than she loved herself, and that is never a mistake, nor was she ever nothing. Even your choice of her could have been the thing that broke the thread in the prophecy. But there are other things, Jackson King. Darker things. Things I have been... Things that have been kept from me. Mixed in this. They would not have another king come into this world. Especially one born of a Christian. Those powers must have prevailed at that time. How do you know all this? I asked. I have known of the prophecy since the day I was born. My Jackson, I have watched you your entire life. That clenched it. You aren't a spirit of mischief, then. That was misrepresented, wasn't it? She seemed to blush. My sister sometimes has a way with words. I am, as you see, my spirit. I'm a kitsune. It is one of mischief. But is love not mischievous, fun, playful, so much so that it hurts without intention? You're the spirit of love. How is that? Love is God. It needs no spirit. Her smile lit my heart. The she do not have a choice, as mortal kind do. We do have choice, but our choice is caught up with our curse. Obligation, I said. She nodded. We must tell the truth. At least our words may not be a lie. We can misrepresent the truth or omit facts. And we must fulfill obligation. And we must seek out obligation, which is why so many of the fairy tales have to do with exchanges of favors. Once my mother fought against her nature and fell in love with a mortal man, very long ago. I am called the second daughter, though I am not her literal second daughter in the chronological sense. You see, all my sisters are children of necessity, born of duty. They had specific roles they were bred and born for. For example, Lillian is the summer lady, the heir to the throne should something happen to the queen. And because of that, if something were ever to happen to the queen, it would not be Lillian, but the queen's personality would take her over, and the process would begin again. I am unique, because I was born not of love, duty, but of love. The only child of the she, born of choice. I thought for a long time. So you're just as stuck as I am. Kit shook her head. I do not see it as being stuck, my Jackson. You are my purpose, and I feel it is right, deep down where the Creator speaks to us, in our souls. Though were I mortal, I would rail against the taking of this decision. But my nature as a she understands destiny and accepts it. This is not something you can understand, raised as a mortal. My mind quieted as I went back to thinking of Angel. What was to be his name? She asked, and I almost lost consciousness from the emotional pain that struck me in a wave of pure sorrow that my heart felt as if it were hit by a .50 caliber round. I don't know how long it took for me to answer, but I knew it was a very long time. Kit sat, her warm hand quietly and rhythmically squeezing my hand, just waiting, not pushing. Finally, the little mini-movie played in my head. Both of us, Angel and I, lay in bed, laughing, discussing names. I wouldn't share the details, not with anyone. It was mine. Just found out. I wanted to name him Buddy. Kit played along, though I knew she'd already knew all this. Buddy? You weren't naming a dog, Jackson Kane. I laughed. You were watching. Yes, I agree with your wife on this. Why Buddy? I've yet to understand it. If you were there watching, that kind of creeped me out, then you know what my childhood was like. As she nodded thoughtfully, I continued. I had no friends, no one to bring home, no one to have fun with, no buddies. A light of understanding came in her eye. Two purposes. He would be your buddy, and his name would be a way to invite others to be his buddy. Once it was appropriate, she said. I nodded and then laughed. Angel never got it either. I had a feeling I was going to lose the argument. And what did she want to name him? After her grandfather. The one that came over from Ireland. The last purebred Cooper to come over. She thought, Sheehan Nineveh Kane. Sean in American, I guess. It made a lot more sense. Though I was pretty set on Buddy. I lost the feeling, the emotion, the fun of that day, and my head sank again to look at my shoes. I'm sorry, Kit. What would you have to be sorry about, my Jackson? I'm sorry I could do nothing to stop it, she said. I looked up sharply and saw tears streaming down her face and gripped her hand tighter. What do you mean? I was there. I was always watching, every chance I could, waiting for you. I enjoyed watching the way you lived with one another, how you were extensions of the same person, how your souls and auras seemed to be bonding together. It fascinated me, she said, her face lost in her own memory of my past. I nodded, waiting. She was in the bath, and you were to go out to celebrate. I lay under the window of the room you were to bathe in. What do you call it? Bathroom, I suggested. She eyed me. Is this true? Seems crass. Restroom then, I suggested. She shrugged. It was just after dark, and the monster knocked on the door. She called out to wait and dress before letting the creature in. Could not follow, yet I couldn't understand why she, who knew what you were, would answer and invite a stranger in. I tried, but I couldn't break the threshold. I was not invited, and I saw everything. What did it do to her? I asked, needing to know, wanting my rage to build. Desperately needed to hurt, something to destroy. She shook her head. No, you will never be ready for such a thing, Jackson Kane. If you've never seen a vampire take its victim, it is not as shown on television. I sighed. Do you know which one it was? Only it was a master vampire. I could feel it. But yet, her head cocked, as if she were almost in her other form. It had a connection, like a part, a link to you, but it was nebulous, and I blew it off. Perhaps it was just the Panic, I felt it not being able to do anything. I would have killed it, could I have got to it. Why would you risk yourself? Why would you want to avenge the woman who married the person you thought you were destined to be mated and bonded to? Ah, Jackson, you are mortal, or raised that way. Love is patient. Love is kind. It was too much. This I must admit. I know everything that I can be observed from the outside, but I didn't know how you felt. I could see how she felt. And you, because of the way you were raised, were always aloof. I cannot promise you anything, as you should not. Who knows what tomorrow has to offer, as my grandfather was fond of saying. There are always more secrets. We made our way back to the hall, where I went to the twin kukri, sitting upon the pedestal, and strapped them around my waist. I turned to the queen, who sat upon her throne with a face of a complete mask, showing neither chagrin, anger, nor happiness at my return. Kneeling before her, I said, "Please forgive me, Queen of the Fae. Though I am none your vassal, as your sister has so pointedly said, I am mortal raised, and have little control on my emotions. I beg your pardon, and accept these gifts, and acknowledge all obligation has been met and honored. If you wish to hold me to discourtesy, then I will acknowledge that obligation." The queen's face softened, and she winked, almost imperceptibly, but enough that I could see. She stood. "Know this. The Jackson Kane was overwhelmed by human emotion, and no obligation has been incurred. For he is now a member of this cult, mate and prince cohort to the second daughter, and as such will be respected with all my authority." Kit leaned over, and in my mind I heard her voice. "This one notes that they will be absent-minded about her orders later on. You have another target, Jackson Kane." Just remember, she means that you have authority over all but her and myself. Never think you have authority over me. "Wow," I said. "Don't get excited, they'd never obey." But aren't you supposed to tell the truth? I mean, if I said straight up, "Do this," and they say yes, they would lie if they didn't do it. They will never give you an answer that is straightforward, that is not in their blood. Why should this be any different? I murmured out loud. The queen smiled. She moved toward us and took our clasped hands and raised them. Thus, obligation fulfilled, and Jackson as the weapons he needs to continue his quest. I looked at the Queen in the eye and asked, "Just what is that exactly?" She winked at me and shrugged. "You'll find out as soon as I know." It was long into the night before we left. I walked hand in hand with my bride that I didn't necessarily love. I was fond of her, certainly, but I didn't know her. No, not like she knew me. And until recently, I thought she was an animal kin or some strange... I didn't ever get the chance to look up Kitsune before all this started. I'm sure it's probably printed on a Wikipedia page somewhere in plain black and white. But I can't say that I understood mortal women, much less a woman of the she, whose motivations were never surface level on the best of times. And because of the bond, I knew it was true, that she loved me and was dedicated to that, whatever I chose to accept. It's an old adage, but men are from Mars and women are from the other side, I suppose. I would see where it went. Once on the other side of the gate, though darkness had settled deeply when we stepped through, we arrived into warm sunlight. "How long?" I asked Dragomir once all three of us were through. Dragomir glanced down at his watch. 15 minutes, give or take. Mac was stunned. "We were there like..." He looked down at his watch. 10 hours. I laughed. Time doesn't run the same way there. You can go in and lose 100 years in an instant and come back old and be old and gray. You know, those old tales like Rip Van Winkle. You can also go and stay no more than a few minutes and find that 50 years have passed. I turned to Dragomir. "What's next?" I asked. "We need to talk," he said. "All of us." "About?" "It's not just wolves now, Jackson. Witches are involved." "Wolves and witches? You're telling me witches are real too?" I rolled my eyes. Well, Dragomir had a strange look on his face, and he had turned to Kit. He bowed and said something in a language I didn't even know, and it made Kit smile. "What did you say to her?" I asked. "I just wanted to make her feel welcome." Kit turned to me with a smile. He said, "Welcome to the family, little sister." I laughed. "Yeah, Dragomir's kind of like an uncle to me. He's always been around." "That is interesting," Kit said, with a wink at Dragomir, who turned red. Not with embarrassment, but anger. I could feel it, like it radiated off of him. And it was gone just as fast as it came. "Let's go to the house," I said suspiciously. "I need to cleanse myself, and you should as well, Mac." Kit laughed. "How simple you are, both of you." "What do you mean?" "You are both of the she now. Mac is not technically of the she, but he's of the First Peoples, so the distinction is minimal. But as my consort, as my mother put it, you are as us. You have new rules, Jackson King." "Christ," I said. Kit clucked. "Not in vain." "Fuck," Dragomir said. Kit smiled. "Much more appropriate, and the conversation we will have should be done before we sleep, while Jackson is tired and his brother can get away before Jackson kills him." "Brother?" I turned to Kit. What brother? Dragomir's face was white. I turned to him and saw the look of shock on his face. What? Mac laughed. I thought he was your uncle, bud. You have the same build, same eyes, even the same tics sometimes. But, as old as he was, I thought, uncle. But brother fits, older brother, much older. I stared at Dragomir confused. Mac was right, though. We did resemble. What the fuck? Secrets of a wizard, Kit whispered as she got into the back of the SUV. And she cleared her throat, looking at Dragomir. You didn't honestly think we would keep it from him. Not in this form. I have free will now. Dragomir's face still red. Jaw clenched, he growled. Our mother, Dragomir said. I put my hand up, not knowing if I should be angry or not. Yet I felt a rage building. But I also felt happy, amazed. I had a brother, and I wasn't alone anymore. Stop. Not until we are home. All I have on me are lethal weapons, and killing one's brother is what led to all this shit in the first place. The end of Chapter 3. Be looking in a few days for Chapter 4, Episode 1, where some secrets will be revealed. But as the old adage says, there's always another secret. We hope you enjoyed. Thank you. This is StoryMan-Jack, and we hope you've enjoyed this program. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And please, most importantly, tell me, good or bad, what you thought about the video. We cannot grow as artists if we can't accept criticism. Again, thank you, and remember, your story is the most important story you will ever tell. So let's make it a great one. Have a great day.